Hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about cancer vaccine. But before that,
Ooh.
you got sextortion.
Oh, let me tell you, sextortion is a really big issue right now. And in the past, sextortion has been targeting specifically, more or less, young women, from kind
Young
of
men
middle
too, I suppose.
school. Pardon?
Young men too, I suppose.
Well, I'm saying historically in the past, it's been focused on young women.
All right.
And if you don't know what sextortion is, it's somebody that commandeers your account. And in order to get the account back, they either want money or they want naked pictures of you, something along those lines. And there are all kinds of variants on it. But lately, they're now targeting young men. And the target audience right now is 13 through 18, which is middle school through high schoolers. And they're all men for the most part, boys, young men, boys. And there's actually been a number of suicides that have taken place, including a congressperson or senator's son from, I believe, South Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. And there have been claimed that, I believe, in the last 12 months, that there have been 32 suicides as a result of that. So this legislature's son committed suicide in the matter of about 4 hours. He got involved in sextortion about midnight, and by 3 a.m., 4 a.m., he shot himself. And again, he was a very popular student. He was on the football team and he was well known. And he took some pictures of himself, thought it was a young woman that he was communicating with. Mistake there. And it turned out to be three Nigerians.
Yeah.
And in the case of a Michigan boy, the Nigerians were just brought back. They were extradited to the United States, and they're to stand trial for murder. So that's a real plus. There's the agency, if you know anybody that's involved with this, it's the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, is the first place you should contact and go to. It's a good organization. And, as parents found out about this extortion, a lot of parents are realizing maybe that their child, that's the reason that they committed suicide. So nothing new here. We had revenge porn about several years ago. And Sam, do you remember his name from Sacramento, California?
No.
Moore, Hunter Moore. It just came to me. Hunter Moore is, I believe, still sitting in prison in that. And if you kind of want to know how this works, and a little bit more on the adult side of it, the revenge porn, there's a documentary video on Netflix that's called Charlotte's Law. And Charlotte's Law is a woman, her daughter was sexploited very early on. And she went to the police, she went to the FBI, she went everywhere to try and get Hunter Moore shut down, his website, and he couldn't do it. And it turns out there were no laws against it. So she's the one that's credited with creating some of these anti-revenge porn laws that we currently have in California. I'm not sure about other states.
Yeah, well, it's good to see people getting punished for this. And, a couple other things occur to me. The kids really shouldn't be so terrified and uptight about sex, and they really shouldn't have access to guns.
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
things would help. And,
yeah,
I think I think we can thank the Republican Party. If you look at Donald Trump and Lauren Boebert and so many Republicans, it apparently doesn't really, and it apparently is perfectly fine to be have some kind of sex scandal and just blow right through it and keep going. Uh,
yeah, yeah.
it's not true that it ruins your life and you're a disgrace forever. It doesn't seem to matter at all anymore.
No. And I've heard from teachers that their students are happening to find their videos of when they were younger.
Yeah.
And there's one teacher that posted, I was a pole dancer and somebody took a video of me when I was, 22, something like that. And the point being that the information is out there on the internet. and this can come back to haunt you.
I remember 10 or 15 years ago, there was a San Francisco policewoman that had to quit because she was also on like OnlyFans or something. And they said, you can't do that. And she said, well, I'm making more money at that than being a cop. But, I wonder if now, especially considering the dramatic contribution of Republican politicians, that maybe people say, okay, who cares? You can be a porn star and a teacher or a cop at the same time. Who cares?
Yeah, yeah. So, societal values a little bit different. I know that in Germany that it's quite common for boyfriends, girlfriends to have overnight, sleepovers while they're in high school. I mean, that's just societally accepted.
I imagine it's pretty common here too, but probably by sneaking around, not letting parents find out, I suppose.
Yeah, but this is more in the open where
Yeah,
it's acceptable.
probably healthier.
Yeah, probably healthier. I would agree with
Then,
that.
like drinking, then your parents could perhaps offer you useful advice and prevent you from
Right.
making the worst mistakes.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
wouldn't be so uptight that you have to kill yourself with the shame of someone finding out.
Yeah. I mean, that is just, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable. But,
Well, I remember
you
when
know,
I was raised, this was like it seemed like the entire message of the church was 100% about sex. And it was like the worst thing in the world, the scariest thing in the world, the biggest disaster that could befall you. I remember that was how I was raised.
yeah. Yeah. I was part of that era as well.
And it's not true.
It's not true. And, if you know about Texas history, I was told that women would have to have a note up through the 70s if they tried to buy milk or go shopping on Sundays, that they just weren't allowed to do that.
I didn't know that, but yeah.
They needed their husband's or father's approval.
Well,
So
that's the way it still is in some of the Islamic nations, but
true.
and they haven't quite gone back to that in the red states yet, but they sure seem headed in that direction.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Well, I got some
All right.
AI
What,
stories.
yeah, Sam, what do you have?
Yeah. So Google has launched a tool to develop apps and chatbots based on their Gemini model. OpenAI's had this, but it hasn't been available because you had to sign up for ChatGPT Plus, and they froze that and just unfroze it like yesterday. So it'll be interesting. That's why, I just taught my AI course again, and I was going to have one there where you set up your own customized chatbot. And I have a couple like that, but mostly it's getting so easy that you don't really need to practice. You don't need to code any Python. There's just like a GUI tool to do it. And so I think we're all going to have this very soon. This is what everybody wants, is a customized bot using your company data or somehow customized for one specific purpose. And making this is going to be like a point and click exercise in a wizard, like making a Facebook profile. Um, and In other AI things, Humana has been caught doing something another insurance company did, which is using an AI tool to deny care with a 90% error rate. And what it does is
Oh
it takes your
no.
symptoms and your treatment and it calculates how many days of hospital we should pay for. And people that really should be in the hospital for like 30 days are being told you get like 5 days. And uh, and this reminds me, there was a movie about this about 20 years ago. There was a scandal where one of the insurance companies had a simple policy. They always rejected every claim, and you would never get anything unless you protested and took them to court. Save a lot of money that way. And this tool is clearly calibrated the same way to just reject everything and then make you fight for it.
Yeah.
So I hope that's illegal. They're getting,
Yeah, it should be. There should be health care for everyone, basic health care for everyone.
well, there should be, and also insurance companies should pay out reasonable claims.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And the other one that I was surprised at is that Dropbox has added AI features to their product, and their AI features use the API to send the data to OpenAI, and they're on by default, apparently. And OpenAI says if you use their API, they will record everything and store it on their servers for like 30 or 90 days. So your Dropbox files are being exposed, and people don't even know this. So I think there's going to be a lot more of this because, of course, that's the easiest way to add an AI feature to your product is to just use the OpenAI API.
So
And
so let me
apparently,
let me understand this. I have a file.
Yeah.
I save it. It's a spreadsheet, Word document, PowerPoint, whatever. I put it into my Dropbox. I want to share it with you, but
Right.
before it even gets shared with you, then Dropbox's AI goes through. And do you have any idea what they're looking for?
No, I don't. I'm at a guess. I'd say maybe they suggest like shared documents you might be interested based on this one. I don't know. But
Yeah, okay.
everybody has a box in the corner. I'm the AI assistant to help you, like Clippy. Let me
Yeah,
help you.
yeah,
Everybody has to have that to be cool. Like,
yeah.
offhand, I would have thought Dropbox doesn't need AI at all. But, like I say, I'm the wet blanket. Companies I consult for say, I want to have this AI tool. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You don't need AI for that.
Well, as long as it's sustainable and you know,
But right now,
ecologic, earth friendly,
oh,
then it's good.
well, there's that. It's totally using a lot of power, but it's better than blockchain, though. It's not using the power quite as pointlessly. But everybody has to have AI on their box. We got now with AI. It's like
Yeah,
chlorophyll. Yeah. So
yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah.
and I guess this next one is in the same category too. There's a facial recognition tool which you can upload a picture and it will find out who anybody is. And people have used it to unmask porn stars and find their real name, which really ruins their life. Porn star that sued Trump, her life was ruined. I heard her in Stormy Daniels. Once
Yeah.
she became, her real name was published, and she was really mad at the newspapers because her husband left her and everything. He didn't know. And
Oh, really?
she felt it was her right to keep her identity private and have a stage name and a private life. And she said it's outrageous to publish my real name. I just like outing gay people. It ruins their life. A whole lot of their life is based on keeping this secret, apparently.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sam,
Yeah,
you could take this to rape victims and victims of crimes, right? If
I know.
if
I know. I know. It reminds me in Europe when somebody does a mass shooting, they will never post their name or their picture anywhere because they don't want to encourage them to like get famous that way.
yeah,
And that
yeah,
seems like a pretty good policy.
yeah, yeah. A lot of this technology, as we've seen in the past, double-edged sword,
Yeah. But
right?
America has this extreme freedom of the press. So you can't really pretty much stop anybody from publishing anything over here.
Yeah, it's been tried
You know,
unsuccessfully.
this is where I often end up defending Republicans, although I'm a Democrat. The Republicans kind of have a point when they want to stop the Biden administration from communicating with like Facebook and telling them to suppress disinformation because you really don't want the Ministry of Truth from the government telling people what news is and what news isn't, even though they were publishing horrible things like vaccine disinformation. Still, if there's a government department ordering you to take that article off your site, that's kind of a bad policy.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I would agree.
well,
I
it's
would
it's
agree.
it's tough. Anyway, let's go back to you. You've got other stories.
Yeah. So this recently there's a pretty big breakthrough in quantum computing. Not that
Yeah,
we're going to see that anytime soon, but the big breakthrough that occurred, and Sam, you might have a little bit more information about this. But what's happened is in the past, if you know your quantum physics, you know that there's an uncertainty of where the electron is going to be in a cloud on an atom. So with quantum computing, there's also a large uncertainty of what a qubit, and a qubit is analogous to a bit. But the problem is to determine if a qubit is a one or a zero, but it could be any range in between. If I'm correct,
yeah,
verify me on that. Okay. You have to have a lot of other bits, qubits, to verify to make sure it's uncertain or
yeah.
to reduce the
Yeah,
uncertainty.
it's actually easily analogous to normal memory. The current memory has a high error rate. So you have to add a lot of error correction for it to actually accomplish anything.
Which is ECC memory.
That's right. And
Error correction. Yeah,
that's right. It's trying to invent quantum ECC memory. Yeah.
right. So right now, a qubit needs somewhere on the order, according to my research, of about 1,000 other qubits to reduce the uncertainty.
Yeah, and you can't really get anything done without a lot more than 1,000 qubits, and they have to have a much lower error rate than the current ones. This is why quantum computers are of no importance right now, but everyone thinks maybe in 20 or 30 years they'll be important.
Yeah, so the breakthrough, again, it's only claimed by one, I believe, one team of researchers, is that they've been able to get the error rate down. And it's now, it needs to be verified. But if that's true, this is going to be another step forward.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
this is the way it is. Every month they make another step forward. You need like three or four things for a computer. You need to transmit the qubits, you need to store the qubits, you need to entangle the qubits, you need to get the noise down. And every month they have another step forward. This is why everyone thinks it's really going to happen in 20 or 30 years. It's useless now, but there's real progress. Every big problem is making real progress. So in a couple decades, it'll actually do something amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, and of course, the most obvious thing is it's going to break all our public key encryption schemes. There was a long article on Reuters going through it, and part of it was interesting, and part of it I kept getting mad because I felt like it was wrong. But I think it's probably just from knowing too much. Everyone keeps saying all our encrypted data is going to get exposed, and that is not true because it's not going to break symmetric encryption. It's only going to break asymmetric encryption.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
Yeah.
anyway, it does mean we have to throw away a lot of the algorithms you're using on the internet and switch to the new quantum resistant ones. And those are coming out. Like I said, I've just got Kyber working about a couple of
Yeah.
weeks ago. So yeah, that's the
Okay.
immediate effect on us is we'll have to upgrade our cryptography. And if you actually had like affordable quantum computers that were powerful, then probably you could start having new things like smarter robots or something. But anyway, that the
How about
problem is though,
how about self-driving cars?
yeah, possibly. But one of the huge problems is almost all quantum computers require these qubits to be chilled down to outrageously low temperatures. So they're
Right.
not at all practical for your home. They're just going to be used in huge data centers at huge cost. Even that will be useful, but it won't really matter until you can afford one in your home.
Right. Or in your smartphone.
Yeah, and therefore they got to get it to work in room temperature, and people are working on that.
Yeah. Yeah. But no success that I've heard of.
Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
see.
yeah. All
We'll
right.
see.
And then there's the one I've got here, which I thought was the most amazing thing. I've heard about this ever since we had the COVID vaccine. They said they were going to make anti-cancer vaccines, and now they have done it. They've made Merck and Moderna have made an anti-melanoma vaccine. And melanoma is one of the most common cancers, skin cancer, and it works. It cuts the risk of death in half and the risk of
Wow.
it spreading to other organs in half. And I mean, this is huge. A ton of people die from melanoma. That's why they're telling us all to wear sunblock. It's really common. It's really deadly. It really spreads fast. It has a low survival rate. This is really important. I mean, all previous medical advances like this I hear are on some esoteric disease that doesn't happen very much. And they have to take some samples of your cancer cell. Then they make a vaccine that will activate your immune system to kill those cancer cells. It's just what it ought to be. They aren't reaching in with knives or radiation to try to kill the cancer cell and killing a bunch of good cells in the process. They're just activating your body's defenses to kill off the cancer cells. So now it can't spread, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. And are they using CRISPR? Do you know?
Um, I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
exactly how they do it, but they do make a custom RNA vaccine to match your cancer cells. So I think it's probably expensive right now, but this can all in bulk production, this will come down, and there's a huge demand for this. Melanoma is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
common, and so
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's the most important.
So, yeah, this is another cancer that was deadly
Oh yeah,
that, yeah, that we found a cure for. Or I shouldn't say a
well,
cure.
it is a treatment,
It's
and
a
it's actually
treatment.
it's a
Yeah. Thank you.
really effective. It's an effective treatment. I mean, it still only stops half of them, but still, that's a
Right.
step forward. And presumably there'll be improvements, and
Yeah.
we should
Yeah.
combine it with other therapies and all that jazz.
Right.
But this is, a real significant step forward, like the first antibiotic. You can suddenly do something about a huge disease that you were pretty much helpless against before.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this kind of brings up, I always hear, we need to cure cancer. And in reality, there are about 250 different cancers,
Oh yeah, I
somewhere
think
in
even
that
more than
neighborhood.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So, the proper response should be, if you're asked for a donation to cure cancer, which one is kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, that's like I felt about that article about quantum computing. I try to be forgiving when they try to translate science into words for the common man. I've
Yeah,
gotten in trouble criticizing tech journalists saying, you didn't say that right. And they're like, well, I'm trying to communicate with normals. And I say, well, I don't know anything about normals. I can't even teach a class to normals. Like occasionally I get in, they wanted me to teach a class on cybersecurity to a bunch of city college police officers. And I said, I can't figure out what to say that they would want to hear.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not,
yeah,
I don't, normal. Every time I try to teach like to an absolutely general audience, I'm not the right person. I
yeah.
can't think like they do. I can't understand their concerns. I can only communicate with technical people.
Understood.
Yeah.
Understood.
It's a common
So,
nerd problem.
yeah. So, I have another story here.
Yeah.
About Cisco's Talos annual cyber security report came out.
Oh, tell us. Yeah.
Talos, right? And it's pretty interesting that a lot of these, have you seen the report, Sam?
No, but I've seen a lot of previous ones from Cisco and Microsoft, and they're always very interesting. Interesting statistics about the types of crime and stuff.
Yeah. So this is vulnerabilities, CVEs, and some of these CVEs are going back 10 years. And cyber attackers are realizing there's a whole audience out there of victims
Well, this
that
is
can.
what I've heard for years is that 90% of attacks use stuff that's like 3 or 4 years since it was patched because they don't need to try any harder. They just go with the old classics, and all your time spent dealing with the latest fashionable thing is kind of wasted. All the experts in the field I've heard have said, you'd be better off doing security 101 stuff, like get rid of the default passwords and put on the existing patches would do you a lot more good than all these exotic fancy things.
Yeah, I mean, they found one, and I can't remember what the product is, but it's in common use, and the default password was 11111,
Oh yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of
And
them.
yeah, and there are vulnerabilities out here that are 10 years old. And we're talking, just to be fair, we're talking Microsoft, we're talking Apple. Apple Safari has a vulnerability that people still have that's out there. Oracle and Java, Windows font drivers and print drivers, print spooler.
And all those things were patched years ago, but
All,
if you didn't put on the patch, then you're sitting.
yep, yep. And you got to know, if you find a vulnerability in Word 2017
Yeah.
that's still there, one
Yeah.
has to assume that nobody has patched it ever since.
Well, I think most end users never patch their stuff.
Well, that's why we were forced to go into automatic updates, right? Or forced updates.
And then I know, but when Microsoft started pushing out forced updates, must be
Then,
years now, but now the updates were also frequently bad and would break things. Those two things should not happen together. I mean, if you're going to force the updates, you really should put them through more quality control.
well, yeah, the trade-off, right?
Well, I'm sure you can argue, just like people do about medical things, that, well, most people are better off with the update. Uh, but
There are exceptions, right? Always exceptions.
I suppose, yeah.
And as well as, when you have a library that depends on another library,
Yeah.
you have the functionality there and it's working. And if there's a security flaw in the library or the library that you're linking to,
Mhm.
then there's a possibility that your app's going to stop working.
Well, I've got I taught this class earlier in the week, and the first day I mentioned I was teaching secure coding, and one of the guys said, "Oh, what product can we use?" And I said, "Well, they're using special commercial products, but I see SonarQube has a free version." So I tried to install SonarQube and get it working. It was nearly impossible, and the only way I ever got it working was to deploy the Docker container version because it's a Java-based app and you need a specific bit of Java and specific libraries. So the only
Yeah.
thing that works is the Docker container, but I'm sure every bit of that code is like 3 years out of date. And there is
Yeah.
no way to update
Yeah.
anything. So actually, this is a huge problem. I mean, especially in open source, whenever you install any open source thing, you have to have the version of Java, the version of this library, the version of that library. And usually updating it all to the latest version will break it.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
actually really serious. In this way, Windows and Mac are more professional. But in the open source community, I think it has a huge problem with this update stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, message there is there are vulnerabilities out there. There are still careers in cybersecurity.
Absolutely. And also, the only thing, since you can never get all the vulnerabilities out, you have to practice good hygiene and have defense in depth. You have to have
Right.
firewalls and network monitoring and an incident response team and all that. It's just like other things. Like, for example, you don't know that some of your employees aren't thieves or being spies for other hostile entities. So instead, you have human resource controls and fire drills.
Separation of duties,
Yeah,
all those classic
yeah,
security that goes back even before computers,
yeah, yeah.
right? Go,
That's right. You
yeah.
need you
Yeah.
need good policies so you can handle the failures of your controls.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Do you have anything else?
I do have a couple more here.
All
One
right.
that really got a lot of, they're going all over the place. So these Polish, there are trains in Poland, and the manufacturer, without telling anybody, said, well, after a certain number of hours, I'm going to say maintenance is required, and the train will just stop until you get this expensive maintenance. And so like the equivalent of BART in Poland said, well, a train's out of service. Oh, another train's out of service. We don't know what's wrong. We're trying to have people fix them and we can't figure out what's wrong. And so their subway system went down because the trains are out. And then a hacker, an anti-DRM hacker,
Oh
came in and
no.
totally hacked them. He said, I can fix it. Said, well, they were desperate. So they hired like this hacking company. He came in and he reverse engineered it, and he found that they had intentionally been bricked by the manufacturer and that there was an access code to turn that off. So he just typed in the
Really?
access code, blam, they turned the trains back on. And now they are trying to prosecute the hacker for violating the DRM. And
Right.
but it just reminds me of the John Deere tractors, where this
Yep.
is the thing. You get these products that have just been sabotaged by the person that built it, and then they want to basically get extortion money to unsabotage the product. That doesn't seem like it ought to be legal.
Well, it's a revenue stream, right? The current model is subscription models.
Well, at the very
So,
least, they should have to completely disclose this when you buy it.
yeah.
It's only going
Yeah.
to run for 3 years until you pay this much to get the next 3 years. Then it might be okay.
Right. And wasn't there a similar issue with the Dreamliner, with Boeing's Dreamliner, that when that went into service, they allocated certain number of bits for the clock.
Oh,
And if do you remember this? And if
hey,
the plane is flying along, once once you roll over to 000, essentially, like the odometer on your car, then the plane would fully reboot. And Boeing was telling people don't fully shut down the computers, even in overnight mode, just allow them to continue to function. And I believe that wasn't found out until it was in service. And luckily, there were no takeoffs, landings, or in flight, but the planes were on the ground when all of a sudden the computers would just reboot.
man. Well, I've heard
So,
so many horror stories like hospital equipment rebooting to put on a Windows update and turning off the
yeah,
anesthesia and stuff.
yeah,
It's you really have this thing where your computer forcibly reboots and interrupts whatever you're doing is really, really dangerous.
right. And what was the solution that Boeing implemented? One more bit.
Well,
One more bit. I'm sorry,
yeah,
one more bit for the clock.
yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, I got one more here, which I could not
Okay.
believe. For years, I think it was Wendy Nahum. I remember a famous cybersecurity researcher talking to me at the RSA conference, claiming the phone hears everything you say. If I talk about like roses at home, I'll get ads for roses the next day. It's spying on you. And there was a huge discussion among people in like the speakers room at RSA where I was. I said, that's bogus. That can't be happening. And other people said, yeah, I'm sure it's happening. People said, I'm sure it's not happening. And anyway, so
Yeah.
this guy is not an idiot. This is Joseph Cox, a famous journalist. He claims to have proof that this is really happening. But he
And
says he found a company, Cox, media group, which has marketing saying you can totally target ads based on what people are talking about. And they really mean it. They have examples. Suppose people are having conversations at home saying, the car lease ends in a month. We need a plan. Or a minivan would be perfect for us. Do I see mold on the ceiling? You can totally find customers that are talking about your service and then target ads based on that. And they say, we know what you're thinking. You're thinking it's illegal, but this is totally legal. Somewhere in the terms of service of those apps you installed, we can just put in a paragraph that says, we're going to listen to everything you say and sell that data to advertisers, and that will make it legal.
So I did a little research on this as well about a year ago. I had a friend was making the same claims,
Yeah.
and the claim was there's a little subtle difference here. The claim was that Apple and Google are listening to what you're saying and then selling your data to companies. And I believe there's a little, again, slight difference. It's not Apple or Google because they out front denied it. And I think we can assume why, even if they were or were not. And I think the research that I found was, you're right, it's apps. It's not Apple or Google, it's an app you install.
But your app turns on the microphone all the time and records everything you say. This is the stuff of like science
Yes.
fiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
That's, again, we have no proof, but
well,
that's my
well,
understanding.
these guys are advertising, marketing the product based on this. So it's not hidden or subtle anymore.
Yeah, right, right. And I think this is kind of coming to light.
I mean, if they're not doing it, you could sue them for claiming to do it and taking your money as an advertiser.
Right,
So,
right, right.
but I
Yeah.
mean, I just thought this was paranoid nonsense. Like, the hippies used to turn off the circuit breaker so the man doesn't hear everything you say.
Yeah, no,
Kind of the
I
same.
understand. So let me tell you, I shifted from being skeptical about this, but once I understood it was apps, then now I'm convinced. I think that's quite possible, and I think you have another piece of evidence to support that.
Yeah.
So the preponderance of the evidence has shifted now in my
Right.
mind.
Yeah, well, this
Is
this
Yeah,
this is this is like the moment when it comes absolutely public. I mean, this is going to hit like a hand grenade the security community, and there's going to be proof very soon. This
but
this
wasn't
article will either be supported or refuted, I'd say, within a couple of weeks.
Yeah, but wasn't this also the case, either with Uber or Lyft, or maybe it was another app, where you would install an app and it would track you where your location is,
Oh, uh,
and when
I
you
think,
removed the app,
yeah.
the tracker was still in place.
Oh,
Do you recall that?
I don't. That last bit I've never heard of, and that sounds insane. You remove the app, it isn't really gone.
Correct. It's not fully gone. It's still recording your location information
That's
and
got to be
phones
a
back
violation.
home.
That's got to be a violation of the App Store's terms of service.
One would think so.
Because
And
Apple threatened to kick Uber out just for targeting based on the IMEI number or something. I mean, they're actually generally very strict about their policies.
yeah, I think Apple, this was a few years ago. I don't think Apple was aware,
Yeah,
that it was something they hadn't considered.
yeah,
And just for our listeners, the IMEI, I hope I got those letters right.
yeah,
That's a unique number that identifies your specific device. It's
right,
kind of like a MAC address on a network card.
right, and
In theory, there
yeah,
should only be one in the world, in the universe.
yeah, and that's why for a while they used that instead of login for apps, and Apple outlawed it, and Uber tried to do it anyway, and they actually like said, "You want us to cancel the Uber app? How much money would you make then? How about you obey the rules instead?"
Right,
That's what they
right.
did.
Yeah. So again, I think this may have been Uber, but I'm not absolutely positive. But it sounds like Uber's bending the rules in the past anyway.
Well, Uber was fantastically, outrageously irresponsible and offensive and breaking all sorts of rules. And now they've greatly reformed, I think. After
Yeah,
they kicked
yeah,
out, they've straightened up and are flying a lot better now.
yeah,
Anyway,
I would agree. All
Hey,
right.
that's a lot of,
Anything else?
no, you don't have any more, do you?
Nope, I don't. So
Okay. Well, that's
we'll,
enough for this one. I'll have
I
another one
think
on
so.
Tuesday.
Sounds good, Sam. Thanks.
All right.